everyone, and welcome to Philanthropy. I'm very excited to launch this new podcast. It is about wellness and service for the community. And so I thought about philanthropy probably a few years ago and was very busy with work and school and never had time because I'm the type of person who jams my life to the max, and I need to learn how to find more balance. And that's what I thought, okay, you know what? I need philanthropy just as much as I think so many other people do. So this year I just decided, okay, I'm going to stop working and focus on this because it's very important to me, and dreams, need to be realized. You have to take risks to make them happen. And so I said, all right, I'm just gonna put my money where my mouth is and I'm gonna do this. So a few people reached out to me and said, I don't understand why your podcast is called Philanthropy and yet it's about wellness. Like, that doesn't make sense. I understand philanthropy to be about money, and you want to talk about yoga and service. That doesn't really make sense. So, I had to let people know that, of course, that's one idea or one definition of philanthropy is, definitely focusing your money on somehow improving society, but there's more to it. And so I'll just read you this definition that I got from AI. And it says, a philanthropist actively donates their time, money, skills, or expertise to charitable causes or initiatives aimed at improving society, preventing problems, and enhancing quality of life. While often associated with large monetary gifts from wealthy individuals, this term can also apply to anyone who gives resources to help others, whether through volunteering, establishing foundations, or using their skills and influence for public good. So a philanthropist donates resources, they focus on public good, they engage in specific causes, they take action, and they can be strategic or reactive. And so you can continue Googling if you want to learn more about that. Of course, for myself, the reason that I chose the word philanthropy is exactly for that reason, the financial aspect. I wanted to be very rich so that I could give all this money to, the causes that are really important to me. And I wasn't getting rich. And I'm still not rich. And you know what? I said, I don't really care. I'm going to figure out a way to, get money so that I can give it out to the things that matter to me. And I'm just going to start. And I had to sit and look at what my own resources are. And personally, I'm a yogi and I'm a meditator. And so I think the number one thing that people compliment me on is my energy. And I think that's always such a beautiful compliment because I've worked really hard to get that energy where I want it. And I wanted to share that with people. And I wanted to share the tools that have helped me to become the person that I am today. And I still, by no means think that I'm perfect in any way. I definitely still have things that I got to work on like everybody else. But I think I have a very healthy mindset and attitude, and I'm very good with positive energy. And so that's what I wanted to share. And I thought, you know what? How this actually started as a podcast was a little bit kind of an interesting process. I have a friend of mine, Tyler Como, and he is doing a doctoral program with me. So we're both in the educational leadership doctorate through the U of S. And so we're in our last year. We're all writing our dissertations right now, which I should be doing. But of course, I'm doing a podcast. And Tyler had a podcast, and I really thought that was such a cool idea. It wasn't even, on my wavelength or anything for something that I could do. But I really thought, oh, good for him. That's really awesome. And then I was sitting in my office last year. I was a principal of a high school. And, I had noticed that we had a lot of issues with students with conflict resolution. And at staff too, really just across the board. There was a lot of struggle with trauma and crisis and conflict resolution. And so being a principal, students, of course, their education is super important to me, and I really dreamed about being able to teach them about conflict resolution in a good way, but I was so jam-packed busy in my job, like from 7 a.m. the second I turned on my phone until probably 5 p.m., like every second of my day was accounted for. It was given to my staff, to my students, the community, and really it was quite overwhelming at times. I mean, there were times when I couldn't even eat lunch. I ate sometimes, if I was lucky, I would walk and eat my lunch while I was doing other things, but there was always somebody with me, like 1 to 6 people or more, and any given day. And the only time I ever had was, the 2 minutes I took in the bathroom. And so there was just no time for me to be able to teach this skill. And, I dreamed about it. I really wanted this to be out there in the world. And so then I started thinking, okay, you know what, maybe I could do some workshops on this. But of course I can't take time off of work, unless I just completely leave my job, which is what I ultimately ended up doing because I felt very, very passionate about it. And I thought, you know what, there's a lot of principals out there who would love to have my job, and just exactly as I predicted, a lot of people applied for my job, and there's a very competent principal in there right now. But I thought, if I step away, they'll have a principal for sure, but if I stay, all of these plans that I'm trying to make happen will not happen, at least not in the way that I would love to see them happen. So I said, all right, I'm going to take time off. I'm going to do these conflict workshops, and I'm going to do them for teenagers. And so then I thought, but then as I was doing this work, and this is exactly what my dissertation is on, it's on difficult conversations for principals, incorporating spirituality. And so it just became my life. And I thought, all right, you know what? I'm a principal who loves kids, and I want to teach them this skill. But everywhere I looked, people were struggling with conflict, like adults, my friends, family members. I went out in public, I could just see, that people were struggling with conflict and anger. And I thought, okay, if I had a wider audience, maybe I could teach the same skills to more people, not just teenagers, as much as I love kids. And so then I started to think, okay, I'll do the podcast. And I reached out to Tyler, and Tyler was so supportive. He's such a wonderful person. And he said, okay, I'll teach you everything that I know if you come on my podcast. So he got me in there, and so he, exactly as he promised, he taught me a lot about podcasting. And now I thought, okay, I'll do my conflict podcast, and then it kind of grew from there because of being a yogi and being a meditator. I thought, well, there's a lot of other things that I would love to teach people about also, and then so it kind of grew. And I'm half Cree, and I'm half German, but I was raised very, very Cree, and so you'll probably notice that that's how I identify. I grew up in only pretty much Cree communities, and even my humor is very Cree, and so that's just who I became. And so in a lot of Indigenous communities, we're guided by the medicine wheel concept, and the medicine wheel has 4 quadrants. I should have one here. I meant to bring one. I'll bring one maybe next time. And there's 4 quadrants. You can easily find one though. So you can look online, and if you're, what is a medicine wheel, and you'll see it, and it's divided. It's like a circle, and it's divided into 4 quadrants. Sometimes you see it like a cross. Sometimes you see it like an X. And those 4 sections have different things that they represent to make a holistic health for people. And so the 4 areas, of course, are our physical well-being, our mental well-being, our emotional well-being, and our spiritual well-being. And I thought, conflict definitely affects all of those areas, but there's so much more to it. And as I looked into wanting to do philanthropy, I thought, well, I would really love to support other people's wellness, because I love selfless people more than anything in the world. People who are community oriented and motivated, and they do what's needed to improve their community. Like, I really admire these people so much, but often I've noticed that people struggle with draining themselves. They're giving and giving and giving, and they're doing it from an empty cup, and then sometimes you get really tired and you get burnout. And I thought, well, how can I support these people? And how can we encourage more people to be like that? Because even for myself, I definitely am always thinking, what more could I be doing? And, I'm just so busy often that I just don't get to do as much as I would like to do. And so I thought, all right, let's change that, not only for myself, but for everybody else. And so then that's how that happened. And it all kind of blended together really quite beautifully. And actually, good news, I did recently do a conflict workshop for a staff at a school, and they really enjoyed it. And so I'm definitely going to have a lot of conflict information on this podcast, just because I want people to focus on, healthy ways of communicating. That's really important to me. But there's so much more that is out there, and there's so many people that are working towards wellness. And so I thought, it's just really beautiful to have everybody, working on how do we just become better humans, and how do we serve our community and take care of other people. And so that's how this came about. And then, of course, with the financial aspect, I really do aspire to give more, of course, from a philanthropic viewpoint. Right now, I don't have 2 nickels to give. I spent a lot of money on getting this podcast set up, and that's okay. I think I need a really wealthy partner, and then he can pay all of my bills, and then all of my money can just go to philanthropic causes. And so I have a boyfriend who really is going to be very rich, he promises me, so maybe that's my golden ticket. But for now, we're still just going to work on how do we fill up our own cups, and how do we help people to do the same thing. So now you understand the background of philanthropy and why it came to be. And so there's going to be, I have a lot of guests lined up. I'm very excited, but I did recently do a call out, and and it's still open. If you know somebody that's fantastic and amazing in wellness or service, and you think that I should host them, please reach out to me and let me know, because I'm still looking for more guests. I'll definitely do some more solo podcasts like this one right now, although I have to admit it's not my favorite thing in the world to just sit and talk, and especially about my own thoughts and stuff. I think it's quite boring for myself and I don't enjoy it as much, but nevertheless there's a lot of information that I would love to share, and that's why I'm doing this. And so there'll be, guests podcasts. I'll have solo podcasts. I also have some really fun podcasts that are coming up. That's going to be, a surprise. I'm gonna launch that one soon, because I do recognize that a lot of the topics towards wellness are healing, and that means we'll cover some pretty tough topics sometimes, and it can get real heavy, and I don't want people to be burdened from the weight of growing into these amazing humans, and that's really important. But sometimes we need to just laugh, and we need to have fun and not take ourselves so darn serious. So that'll be coming up too, and so you'll see a mix. There'll be a whole bunch of different kinds of podcasts on here, and I'm open to ideas too. So if you think that there'd be something you want me to cover, or you think would be a great idea for me to cover, then reach out to me. I'm open to that. I would love that. But today, what I want for us to do is we are going to do a meditation. Because, like I said, I have been a meditator for a long time. I had to sit and think about how long it's been, and I think I was 30 when I did my first meditation, and I'm 46, so 16 years. And you know what? I started really strong, and I was very devoted to this because I read this amazing book. I found it in a used bookstore. And it was right around the same time Elizabeth Gilbert came out with her movie and her book, Eat, Pray, Love. I think that's how the title goes. And so in her story, she talks a little bit about the Bhagavad Gita. And I didn't know what this was. And then all of a sudden I came across one in a used bookstore, and I thought, well, that's really kind of, serendipitous. And I thought, all right, I'm going to read this and see what that's about. I was kind of exploring a lot of spiritual texts at that time, and so it kind of fell in line because it was Hinduism, and I really didn't know anything about yoga. But she was talking about, she went to this ashram, and now the Bhagavad Gita is talking about yoga. And so I was like, all right, I guess I'll try yoga. And it was right at a time in my life where I was looking for something to do in the winter. And, I'm normally for 20 years or so, I was a runner. And so I thought, well, I can do a treadmill, but sometimes treadmills can get super tedious and boring. And I had a treadmill, but I thought, nah, let's try this yoga. Let's see what this is all about. Because I don't know anything about it, and it was starting to be this kind of new thing. And so I started, and I went to the library and I got some yoga videos, and I went to Walmart and I got like a cheap yoga mat set, and it had a rubber ball and it had a pump, and I was like, all right, this was a pretty low investment because the videos were free. Of course, I rented them from the library. And then I found it to be super challenging, and I couldn't believe how weak my upper body was, because I was very strong on my lower half from all the running for how many years, and now suddenly I was working out my upper body, and so all of these ideas just kind of blended together: the Bhagavad Gita, yoga, and meditation. And so my yoga journey started right around the same time too, and by yoga journey I mean asana. So there'll be, if there's any yogis that tune in, and then the yogis will be correcting me and saying, you're a yogini because you're a girl. And so yeah, that's true, but I always use the term yogi, and so that's how I often refer to myself. But in any case, these ideas blended together. 16 years ago, I started yoga, I started meditating, and really they changed my life 100%. And I found that meditation was the tool that really transformed my life, more than asana. I really found that meditation helped me with so many things. I found it to be very challenging also. I found that it allowed me to tap into my inner self in a way that I didn't even realize needed to be explored. And so it was a really exciting kind of journey for me. I found that I became a lot happier as a result. I think that's probably the number one thing for meditation. If you're hoping to become happier, then you probably need to meditate, because all of that kind of falls into line with that. And so I started this journey from this Bhagavad Gita book, and it was a 3-volume set. It was from Eknath Easwaran, and so I had volume 1. And I read it, and he was such a beautiful writer. And of course, I'm a writer too, so I probably at that time I was writing for columns for newspapers and freelance articles, and somewhere around there I was a writer for a radio station. I did some ads for them. And so when I read this book, and this writer was just such a beautiful writer, it was so enjoyable. And he talked about, passage meditation, and And that's one form of meditation. There's lots of different ways to meditate. But of course, he kind of went over some of the things that will help you as a meditator, some of the things that hinder you when you're trying to meditate. And so I thought I'm going to give it an earnest try. And he recommended 20 minutes per day, twice a day, once in the morning and once in the evening. And still to this day, I'm not that super regular, where it is 20 minutes every morning and evening, but I do have a very strong meditation practice nevertheless. And I'm very regular about it. And I always know when I need it, because then I start reverting to my old ways. And I, was maybe angrier or more irritable. And I can tell if I start getting snippy or too cheeky, then it's time. Maybe it's been, a few days and I really need to get back into it. But, through these 16 years, I've definitely seen, the things that can help you, that support your meditation practice with diet and exercise, asana, that sort of thing. But the most profound thing that I noticed about meditation was, like I said, how happy I became. At the time when I started, and this is just to show you maybe the difference. At the time when I started, I used to go through a lot of breaks on my vehicle, and that really highlighted to me how aggressive, I guess, I was when I was a driver. I was always speeding somewhere. I was always so short on time, and still to that, still back then, I jam-packed things into my life, and so I was always racing somewhere. And by racing somewhere, then you're always late, and I was hammering on my brakes, and my vehicle suffered, and so I had to often get my brakes changed, and I found, like I said, I was more irritable back then, and just a lot of unprocessed anger. And again, it comes back to that conflict. People, a lot of people are not very aware of good conflict resolution skills, and unless you were blessed to be in a family where your family had those strong skills quite naturally, or they worked on them, and so you were raised in that environment, then you were probably like me and you didn't learn those skills, and so you were just fumbling your way through life, and it's so easy to get angry. There's just so much injustice in the world, and it's so easy to be offended about everything, and I was no different. And so, at that time, I remembered when I started to meditate, even my sleep improved. I found that, I had deeper sleeps, and I was calmer. I was more focused. When people would talk to me, I could just really tune in and listen. And I think that's where that shift kind of happened, where before meditation, I had been much more of a talker, and I'd been, I'd think a lot more about myself, and, there's a whole ego portion to that. And then after I really began that meditation practice, I really started to become a better listener, and I focused on listening. I wanted to listen. And so I really started to enjoy the science of listening. My whole life I'd just been a talker, and I was a terrible listener. Although I did notice when people were good listeners, I didn't know how to do that. And so with that support of that meditation practice, I was able to start just calming down my energy and really just kind of focusing on listening to others. And so, I continue to notice all the time, more and more, as my meditation practice deepens, how beneficial it is to my life and how much better my life gets the more that I meditate. And I have a stronger relationship with Creator than I've ever had in my life. And I always say that is the most important thing to me in this universe, is Creator. And anybody who knows me knows how much I love meditation and Creator. These are like two very dear topics to my life, and I think that they go hand in hand. really beautifully. And I'm not, trying to convert anybody who's listening. You can choose to feel however you feel. I'm not going to tell you you need to believe in a creator or God or whatever. That's your choice. You can make that choice. But for me, meditation really supported that relationship. And so yeah, that's why I wanted to share this. And I thought, my very first episode, I would explain philanthropy to people, give a little bit of background of who I am, and lead people through a meditation, a very simple one. And there's, like I said, lots of different ways you can meditate, and I've tried lots of different ways. But this is the one that I generally start people on because when I started, I jumped into the deep end, and I, did the 20 minutes in the morning and the evening, and it was really intense. And you can do that too. If you want to do it, you just want to jump in and you're hardcore like I was, then go for it. I would still recommend it. But if you kind of want to ease your way in, there's a gentler way. And so that's what we're going to do. I'm going to set you up, and hopefully, on your own time, you can start practicing this very foundational skill. And so I'll explain to you how we're going to do it, and then I'll get you to just pause this video, or you could do it after the video. It's up to you. But I will make that time in there because you don't need me, yabbering the whole time while you're trying to meditate. I definitely don't want that happening. So I'll give you the cue. Just so you know, I'll give you the cue, and you can pause me and come back to me, or you can just do it right after this one. That's totally fine. All right, so meditation, the first thing I always tell people is that meditation is not relaxation. So whatever you've been told, I know people have come to me and said, Jess, I have this app and it's, really great and it helps me to sleep at night. It's this meditation app. And, at that point I usually kind of start laughing because, well, I'm like, then you're sleeping. You're not, you're relaxing. You're not meditating. So meditation is a lot more to do with mind control, I would say. And so I always recommend to people that when you're going to meditate, it doesn't matter how you sit. If you want to sit on the floor in Padmasana where your legs are crisscrossed and your feet are up by your hips, that's the fancy yogi way to do it. Great. If you're flexible and your hips are open enough, great, you can do that. But if you want to just sit in a chair, that's totally fine. If you just want to sit on the floor and you want to sit in, I think it's Sukhasana, and it's kind of like an easier, folding of the legs. One kind of is out and one is tucked under. Then you can do that. Or, just sit against the wall. If you need some kind of back support, it doesn't matter. But the most important thing that I always say to people is to keep your spine erect. Okay? So the reason I say that is because then you're going to be alert. And you need to be alert because that's what meditation is, right? We're going to be processing stuff that's going on inside of us. And traditionally, meditation was a means, of course, to connect to Creator, right? And to realize your full potential with, enlightenment or self-actualization, self-realization. I'm sure you've heard all of these terms, nirvana. And they're all maybe a little bit different, but they kind of are all going in the same direction. And so that was the form of, or the purpose of meditation. And you know what? Maybe you'll start meditating today and that's going to be your path, and you'll self-realize very soon, which would be amazing. But for lots of us where, there's still tools, or this is a tool that is still going to help us improve as a human. And so I always tell everybody, just do it anyway. Even if you're going to self-realize in this life or in the next life or not for 200 lives, if you believe in reincarnation, just do it anyway. Because the amount of transformation I've seen in my own life personally from when I started to where I am now is so profound that I just think, gosh, what an amazing tool. If somebody had taught me this when I was just a kid or a teenager, what a blessing it would be in my life. I think I would have done things so differently, but of course, then we can get into karma and dharma and all of that stuff and unpack all of those terms, and people would say, well, you are where you are because you need to be, kind of thing. And so there's no regrets, right? Of course, I definitely am still grateful, nevertheless. And I think it doesn't matter how old you are. If you're in your 60s and you want to start meditating today, oh my goodness, how amazing. And if you're 15 and you are listening to this podcast, then I celebrate that you're learning, you're in your youth, and you have, all these amazing years ahead of you. And that's going to make a big difference. For me as an educator, I definitely have taught a lot of students, and, even students who have ended up in my office for any number of things. If they were struggling or having a hard time, we would sit and I would say, okay, you know what? I think you would benefit from meditation. If you want to learn, I can teach you. And so anyway, I know there's so much to learn about meditation, but I know I can get real excited and I can get a little bit off topic. Anyway, so where were we? We were seated and we have our spine is erect. And now what I like to tell people is that as you're meditating and you're going to commit to a certain amount of time, you're going to decide this ahead of time. I usually suggest to people start with 5 minutes or start with 10 minutes. And, you can work your way up from there. And even if you just have like the worst attention span, maybe you have a bit of ADHD, 2 minutes, that's still a great start, and then you can build up your stamina over time. So pick a time, however long you have decided, and then we're going to commit to that. So we're going to be seated through that time. Hopefully we're not moving our body too much, because then that can get really distracting. And we really want to be able to, whatever position we're in, we're comfortable enough that we can sit there as long as we can without moving our body. That being said, when we start meditating, you probably will get sleepy. There's a lot of people who get sleepy, and I struggled with that for many years. And also, to this day, there's still times when I meditate too late in the night, and now I'm like super sleepy. Or sometimes in the morning, if I get up too early and I meditate, then I might be, kind of doing a little bit of this nodding off, and that's normal. We're going to learn to forgive ourselves. That's okay. It's okay if that happens to you. Don't judge yourself. I think people are so harsh on themselves. And so hopefully with some of these tools, you'll learn to, forgive yourself a little bit and just allow yourself room to be human and to grow. So when you're seated, and I'm telling you, please, try not to move as much because that's distracting. But the one thing I always tell people is, if you find yourself kind of doing this drooping thing, pull yourself up again, right? But don't be so rigid about it, because I know there are people who will, be really stiff spine, and then that's all they're focusing on. They're focusing on, like Jess said, I needed to sit straight, and so I'm going to be the straightest board ever. But then now, again, all of your focus and attention is on your spine, and we don't want it to be on your spine. You just want enough, stability so that it helps you to focus, but don't be obsessive about it, okay? So that's real key. And there's a lot of focal points that you could have when you're meditating, but for us today, we're going to focus on the breath, okay? So you're going to focus on the inhale and your exhale, okay? And so you're going to do that throughout the meditation. So you're going to be focusing on that as much as possible. And then what's going to happen is your mind is probably going to start tossing all kinds of thoughts out at you. And what I always recommend to people is to not entertain your thoughts. And what I mean by not entertain your thoughts is sometimes there'll be a thought dancing around in our head, and then we attach to it, and suddenly it just becomes bigger than it needs to be. So for instance, let's say I was meditating and I had the thought, I wonder what I should have for supper. Now, if I said, please just don't entertain your thoughts, then you could just like maybe watch that thought float by. You can put it on, some people say put it on a cloud, let it drift away, acknowledge it, you see it, that's it. You leave it alone. And then we're going to focus on the breathing again. Inhale, exhale, go back to your breathing. Like we saw that thought, we left it alone. Now, on the flip side, if you entertain that thought, so now you're going to be like, okay, what should I have for supper? Here's the thought. Entertaining it looks like this. Maybe I should make pizza because I haven't made pizza in a while. But what do I have in the fridge? So you mentally open your fridge. Do I have, oh, right, I used that cheese for that grilled cheese, so I might be out of cheese. And then you're like, what kind of sausage should I get? Or am I going to go meatless? Pineapples, I like pineapples. Don't bash me. I know people don't like pineapples, but I love them. So then you're thinking of all the ingredients that you have in your fridge, the things that you need to get, and then you start thinking about, when should I go get these things? And when should I, start cooking them? And who's going to be eating it? Am I going to invite people over? Yada, yada, yada. So that's what I mean. Now you have gone full blown on this thought. And now you're like, okay, I have filled up my 5-minute commitment to meditation thinking about pizza for supper. And then all of a sudden the buzzer goes off and you go, okay, now I'm all great and I'm ready. And so meditation is not your to-do list. It is not, all the things that you've been sitting and thinking about. And it could be. I mean, I'm not going to say that that doesn't have a purpose. At some point down the road, maybe we'll do another meditation where, we're going to have a specific intention and how are we going to explore that through meditation. But for now, we're just going to eliminate that part. So we're going to put the thought on the cloud, watch it drift away, don't entertain it. And when you start seeing that you're getting distracted, go back to your breathing. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. So that's what we're going to do. So you pick your time commitment. Inhale, exhale. Remember, making sure that your spine is erect, but not too firm. And if you start doing the nod and you start drifting, you just pull yourself up and then get over it. Don't worry about it, okay? It happens to people. We're not looking for perfection here. We're looking for improvement and better clarity, better focus. So you're going to do that. Also, keep in mind that there are distractions. So you're going to hear things maybe unless you have a real good soundproof room, or you want to put headphones on, or something that's going to block the sound, earplugs, I don't know. But if you just sit, you might hear a sound. Now again, that's going to pull you away and it's going to distract you if you give attention to whatever that sound is. Maybe it's a dog barking. When I do this with kids, often somebody will start snickering and then everybody else is snickering. Kids are like that. And so I always tell the kids, okay, you know what, if somebody starts laughing, try your best to ignore them. Don't get engaged in the laughter or whatever it is, go back to your breathing. Inhale, exhale, just leave it alone. Don't even attach an emotion to it, because sometimes, and we'll get into that too, but often, we attach emotions to thoughts. So if we're making a judgment that it's good or bad, now suddenly, we're angry or something, and that can be distracting too. So again, you're just going to go back, inhale, exhale, the sound happened, let it go, it's all right. And so I think that's pretty much the basics. You just have to make that determination of how long you want to meditate for. And you can go ahead and, you can pause me as soon as I finish this thought, and then, set your timer, and then, you can begin exactly as I've suggested. And I do recommend that you do this first thing in the morning. Well, not exactly first thing in the morning. So go to the bathroom, brush your teeth, and then that's it. Nothing else. Go and find your meditation spot and go sit down and then start. Because the more things that you start doing in the morning, then the more your mind wakes up. And so then that's going to add to the list of distractions. So it's very good to just do it as soon as possible. And, there's a time in the day that the yogis say, Brahma Muhurta, I think is what it's called. And And that's when it's sunrise and sunset. And there's a specific energy in the universe at this time that will support you with meditation. And also because that's when a lot of meditators are meditating. So there's like a natural, universal meditation energy that's going on around you at that time that will support you. So if you wanted to do it during those times, sunrise or sunset, then that's going to aid you. And then again, if it's at nighttime, kind of what I mentioned earlier, try not to do it when you're dead tired, because then you're going to be doing the drifting and the nodding, and so try and set a time for yourself where, you'll still have some energy. You'll be able to, commit to this and do some focusing, because that's what it is. It's a lot more about focusing and concentrating. So, set up your time. And then, set your timer on your phone. That's what I use. I use I don't set it anymore. I used to a long time ago. But now, I can sit for quite a long period of time, and it's okay. And I'll make time for it now. Whereas in the beginning, my time, like I said, was 20 minutes. And that can be a very long time for, if you're beginning. So if you're just, you want to try it and you think, hey, 20 minutes is good for me, good. I'm happy. That's great for you. But if you're just like, that's too much, I don't know, then just, be gentle. Do 5 minutes, do 10 minutes. Nobody's judging you here. Everybody who meditates, even 2 minutes a day, you're better off than before you didn't meditate at all. So now you pick your time commitment and you're going to sit. And again, let the thoughts do what they want to do. Let them drift by. Don't even think about them. Go back. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Set the alarm on your phone and make it a nice timer so that, when you're done, because your energy is going to calm down. You are going to start kind of relaxing, not sleep relaxing, hopefully, but you will start relaxing. And at that point, when you're in this nice lull, you're feeling lovely inside. At the end of a meditation, you're going to probably feel very beautiful. Eventually. I don't know. In the beginning, you might be a little bit irritated, a little bit aggravated because we're not used to that. And that's okay too. But, eventually you'll get to this point where it starts to feel really beautiful. And if you have a chime that goes, rah, 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 you'll feel your nervous system will spike up again. And so we don't want that. We want you to, come back to reality, with this beautiful, profound sense of peace and, joy, and don't jar yourself. So, spend some time, go through your chimes and pick the one that's like a nice little, harmony or a harp or something beautiful. And so try that, okay? So this is where I promised you I would set you up, and then if you want, you can pause me. I'm not going to do a meditation on this podcast. I want you to do that on your own, because otherwise I'm just going to be sitting here staring at you. Well, I won't. I would close my eyes, I suppose. But I think you can do it on your own. If you think, you know what, next time, Jess, I want you to meditate with me, I will do that. That's up to you. But I think it'll suffice for you to pause me and then try all these tips that I've mentioned to you and, give it a whirl. And then once you're done, you can come back and then we'll do a nice little closing. All right? So here's the point where you're going to pause me and then you won't hear me. Okay? Because I'm distracting. I don't want to distract you. I just told you about distractions. All right, so you're going to pause me right now. Okay. All right, so now you've meditated. Welcome back. And I hope your first time was good. I wish I was sitting there with you, and I was, in my thoughts and my intentions. The more people who meditate in this world, it just brings so much joy to my heart. And so I hope you had a good experience. And some people, because I've led quite a few meditations, and people often have two camps. There's the group that were like, oh, it was so beautiful. It was what I needed. I loved it. And then there's the other camp who are like, oh my God, I had every single thought in the universe. In 5 minutes, they all came, every thought. My mind was like monkeys. And hey, you know what? I have both of those experiences still to this day, you know, where I have monkey brain, and then other days where it's like, oh, it was so easy and effortless and beautiful. And I think I've gotten to a point now where there's not so many monkey days, but that definitely was a struggle for me in the beginning. So if you're in either camp, you know what? Those are both really normal responses, and hopefully you didn't fall asleep. If you fell asleep, that's okay too. You know what? It takes practice. This is a skill, and that's why I say meditation is not relaxation. We are focusing, and all of that focus will just benefit you, and it's going to change your energy. It's going to change how you respond to the world, and then as you really notice that change in yourself, everybody else is going to notice that too. And everybody else is going to benefit from that too. And so I've definitely seen energy change around me because of my presence, right? And I know a big part of that is the meditation. And so people have, really strong reactions to it. Sometimes people are just so happy to be around me, and and they ask me about, how are you always so, calm or happy, or, these sorts of things. And I always tell them it's meditation, right? I wasn't born this way, and I'm a work in progress, but I'm also proof that it does work. And then on the other side too, there's people who are like, I can't stand her. And I think, sometimes it can be jarring, right? Like if we have so much turmoil in our own lives and somebody comes into our life and they're not like that, then it really makes us turn on our heads and go, what the heck? How do you even do that? How do you even get there? And that's what this podcast is all about, right? So we're going to do that together. And we're going to go through all of that. And for me, I'm always going to say this: go back to your meditation. Go back to your meditation over and over and over again. So that's why I want number 1 episode. I want you to start, and I really hope you develop this, part of your life, because the benefits are amazing, so beautiful. And yeah, I'm really excited, and I really hope that you enjoyed that first meditation. I really hope that you make a commitment to it, that you decide, I want to get better at this. I want to learn more about this. And hey, you know what? I'm here for you if that's the case. So thank you so much for listening to this first podcast. I brought a tea here, and I didn't even drink it once because I was, jabbering the whole time. But it's something that I really love to talk about. And so I was happy to do that for you. So there you go. That is the first episode. So, I don't know, we're at 40 some minutes, and I'll be back with more. And thank you so much for joining me today. Gosh, that was such a blessing and a dream come true for me, right? I wanted to do this for so long, and so I'm really excited and happy. If you want to continue joining me on this journey, let's all become the human that we want to be, right? And bring our potential to the world, and make our own lives better, but also make everybody else's lives around us better too, just by making some really good changes in our life. And if you're wanting that and you're craving that, then you're not alone. I am too. I am always working towards that in my own life. So thank you so much. It was such a pleasure, such a joy, and I hope you have a wonderful night, and we'll see you again next week. Or I'm going to be starting probably slowly. I'll do 1 episode a week till I get used to this routine, and then I'm aiming towards 2 times a week. So check back with me when I'm a little bit more regular, or just stay with me. Come with me every single day on every single podcast. I would absolutely love that. So take care and have a great night. Hi.